Well, good afternoon, everyone. This is Dr. Rocks here, and this is the first of hopefully weekly update series on the energy industry. And as we go through this and this show develops, I am expecting there to be a little more fluidity, if you will, in the presentation and more familiarity with what exactly I want to talk about, what the resources are that I show on a weekly basis, and that will develop and become smoother through time. And so as I was preparing this, I just realized that there's a very, very large body of information out there that deals with the energy industry, and so we're going to start kind of easy, if you will, and we're going to start focusing on the petroleum industry. So that is oil and gas, and of course that is where most of us get our mobility from. We use fuel to drive, and a lot of you might heat your homes with fuel. We have natural gas that you'll heat your home with, cook your food, those types of things. And so the basic energy, and then we'll also be looking at other sectors as well, the coal production and electric power generation, both from coal and natural gas, wind and solar and nuclear and all those other sources that are existing. And so we can't do that on a weekly basis and look at every one of those. This would be a 2 or 3 hour show each week, and we can't have that. And so we're going to start just looking at petroleum industry today. And there's some basic things that I want to accomplish through this. One is to give you more information on where your energy comes from. And then second, we can track through numbers. And so as we go through this, there's certain things that I want to show you every week, like basic things. The number of drilling rigs operating in the United States. That's a pretty standard number that we can get a feel for how the industry is going in terms of the economic activity of the U.S. So we'll look at those things on a weekly basis, and then each week I want to focus maybe on something a little different to kind of expand and give you some more information about things that are going on industry-wide. And so this week we're going to start by just giving you a little background in the Williston Basin, which is just north of where I live here in Rapid City in western South Dakota. And it is the home of the Bakken shale, which is a huge production since about 2011, 2012 is when those wells were developing in the Bakken. And so we're going to take and look at how those wells are drilled and how the oil production comes out of those fields. And so let's just get started today. And we are going to be looking at some basic screens here. And I have several sources, and you can see on this first one, this is from oilprice.com, and it is a clearinghouse for just cataloging data and information regarding to the oil activity. And so what I want to focus on here is right down here toward the bottom of the screen where it says rig count. And these are the number of rigs that are operating in the United States. And this is updated July 15th. So let me go back to my calendar here real quick so I can just make sure. So yeah, July 15th was 1 week ago. And so if I continue these on a weekly basis, I'll be using those numbers. And so the next week it'll be the 22nd, etc. as we go through. So 756 rigs. Now, what does that mean? And we'll look at that in a minute on what that means in relation to other things. But that was an addition of 4 rigs over the previous week. 279 frac jobs were completed, and those are essentially wells that had been drilled and then were brought online. And that is 6 less than in the previous week and last week, as well as of, you can see here, it says July 8th. 12 million barrels of oil per day being produced in the United States. Okay, so this chart right here just looks at all the rigs. That's the green in the top line up here. And as you go through this, it just gives you the number each week. So it's been pretty stable. This goes back to the 25th of April, and there were 695, and now there's 756. So, some 60 rigs added. since April. And then the blue, the second line, are those rigs that are oil drilling, and then this red are rigs that are drilling for natural gas. Natural gas is down here at the bottom. This middle one is the crude price of West Texas Intermediate, and we can change that to look at various other things in here, but the crude price is probably pretty fair. Okay, so 756 rigs. If we compare that with another site, this is the American Oil and Gas Reporter, U.S. rig count, and here's some historical data that goes back to 2011. And so again, this week, 7/15, there's 756 rigs, and that's the same data we looked at from oilprice.com. If we go back to the first of the year, which is right here, the first week in January, there were 588 rigs operating. Okay, and now 756. So it's been increasing all through this year. If you're interested, you can go back and look at these data all the way back into 2011. But there are other sources that show historical data that goes back further than that, and at some point we will probably take a look at that. Okay, well, the idea of drilling a well is to produce hydrocarbons, oil or gas. And so that is tracked, of course, for all the wells that are completed and pumped and produced. Then that commodity goes to the market and it is sold for a price, obviously. And so those numbers are tracked. So on this chart right here, we're looking at the U.S. field production of crude oil on a weekly basis, and these numbers are in 1,000 barrels per day. So 10,000 barrels. So 10,000 1,000 barrels. 1,000 is a million, so 10,000 is 10 million barrels. And you can see that since about the end of 2017, this data point right here says 12/29/2017, it was 9.78, about 9.8 million barrels, and then the next week it jumped up over 10 million barrels, and we've been there pretty much ever since, a few little drops below. And the week ending 7/15, just under 12 million barrels produced per day in the United States. So again, you might say, well, what does that mean in relation to long term? This chart goes back to 1985. In 1985, we were producing just under 9 million barrels a day. By 2005 to 2010, the U.S. was down to just over 5 million barrels a day, and it was decreasing. This was a decreasing trend. So if we look back at the long-term production record, this goes from 1920 to current. You can see that all through the early years of the 20th century, the oil production was increasing, more wells were being drilled, and more oil's being produced, and that reached a peak in basically December, somewhere in there, of 1970, with just a touch over 10 million barrels per day produced. And this increase right in this last little up thrust up here was due to the Alaskan pipeline and the development of the oil fields up in Alaska. But since that time, we've been decreasing until in this early 2000s time frame, we were down to 4 million barrels a day, and it was a downward trend, and it looked like it was going to be a continuing downward trend. So you might ask, well, what happened here? Why did it skyrocket? Why did it go up to these current levels up here? And that is due to drilling techniques that have brought the oil to the surface in a new way, and that's mainly with the development of shale oil and horizontal drilling. So I'm going to be putting up just a series of a few pictures in here to, again, try to show you, and maybe the first time you've ever seen any type of drilling equipment and how wells are drilled. But the first step in drilling an oil well is deciding on where to drill, and there's a whole big science that goes into that. That's an aspect of the industry I've not worked in, is the exploration part. But once a target has been identified and a company would then acquire a lease to drill, they will lease a drill rig, bring out on location, and that drill rig drills a hole. Through most of the energy industry in the United States, the wells were drilled vertically with very small angle deflections off of that vertical hole through various tools and techniques that were used. But starting around 2008 to 2010, a new concept of what's called horizontal drilling was developed. And horizontal drilling is pretty much like it says. It means that we start from the surface and drill a vertical hole to some depth. And then at that depth, the drill bit is turned from vertical, in other words, going straight down, to horizontal. And so you're drilling essentially parallel to the surface, or at a 0 degrees, or a very, very shallow angle of hole that then is drilled out to current times in modern days, 20,000 plus feet. So you might have a well that's 10,000 feet deep vertically, and then it extends another 20,000 feet horizontally. You get a 30,000 foot well. Now the whole idea of this and what the increase in this production is about is a traditional vertical well. When it reached the target formation, let's say that target formation was 100 feet thick, which would probably be for most of them higher than average, and it would drill a hole vertically through that 100-foot thickness. If that had commercial quantities of petroleum in it, it would be completed and produced from that 100 feet. So one well, X million dollars to drill, is producing from 100 feet of net pay. In horizontal drilling, the hole is drilled down to some point above the pay zone, and then drill bit is slowly turned from vertical to horizontal, so that by the time the drill bit acquires that near horizontal 0 degree angle on the bit, it is in the formation that is going to be producing the hydrocarbon. And now you drill 20,000 feet or so in that formation, and now one well, instead of having a vertical penetration of 100 feet, has a horizontal penetration of 10, 15, or 20,000 feet. So you increase the productive capacity of that well hugely. And through those technologies, that is why that curve has increased on U.S. production since 2010. It's the horizontal drilling and then the hydraulic frac operation, where you stimulate that reservoir and you fracture it and open up the porosity to flow the oil into the wellbore. And we'll talk more about that in another episode. So these pictures I'm showing you here is a couple of innovations that allowed that transference of vertical to horizontal to take place. The first was the advent of drilling bits, new drill bits, instead of what was existing, which was called a tricone bit, where 3 independent cones rotated. The new bit, a polydiamond crystalline bit, does not move. The whole bit head rotates, and the teeth are polycrystalline diamond inserts that are very, very, very strong, very tough. And the increase in the penetration rate, or the amount of footage drilled per day, has increased dramatically and allowed these holes to be drilled much, much more quickly than what was allowed with the old tricone bits. Plus the fact that a tricone bit has to be rotated from the surface, and so the bit is rotated. The bits now operate on a motor, and I'm showing a picture of that motor here. It's just this, let's say, a 20-foot long pipe. The drill bit screws on the bottom end, and that bottom 5 or 8 feet is the only part of the drill string that rotates. And it does so through what's called the mud motor, and that's the back part of this tool, where this has a series of fans and vanes and different mechanisms that when the drill mud is pumped down through this tool, it builds up rotational torque, and then the bottom end of it spins, and that spins the drill bit, and that makes the hole. Okay, so that has resulted in this huge increase again in the drilling, in the production that we see here. So if you look at this site, then you can go down to the bottom of this and you see way back to 1920 to current. It gives the production by month out of the United States in 1,000 barrels per day. So again, this is 1.1, 1.18, 1.2, etc. And I'll just skip down here to the early 2000s. So by 2000, we were down below 6 million barrels a day. There were a couple of points in here where we even dropped into 4.9 million barrels a day, and again the trends were down. And then through that horizontal drilling, and then drilling into the shales where the oil is actually made, then you can see these rates began to increase. And by 2012, up over 6 million barrels a day, then 7, then 8, then 9, then 10, then 11. And this record goes through April, 11.6 million barrels a day. Okay, so these numbers are tracked by the U.S. Energy Information Administration, or the EIA. And this is a page on the EIA website, which is the weekly petroleum status. And again, this ended last week, so it's a week in arrears. But we can look at some of these and get an idea of what goes on in the industry. And these are the numbers that we're going to kind of track through weekly, so you can start to get a feel for variances and fluctuations and things in the market. Okay, so the weekly petroleum status report, which just has some basic information in here. U.S. refinery inputs averaged 16.3 million barrels per day through last week. 321,000 barrels per day less than the previous week. So the refining capacity has in recent weeks then been decreasing. Refineries operating at just under 94% of their total capacity, and there's a lot of reasons for that. They're never operating at 100%. There's always maybe some part or a refinery over here and a refinery over there that are shut down, being refit, maintenance, those types of activities. Okay, gasoline production, 9.4 million barrels per day. So that is what you fill up in your car when you go down to the gas station is gasoline, right? If you drive diesel, then 5 million barrels per day of diesel, and that was down. Okay, we still import oil. We're producing about 12 million barrels a day in the U.S. We're using somewhere around 18 to 19 or something like that. So 6.5 million are imported. And this also looks at crude inventories. We're going to just track these numbers, and they're not going to mean a lot from month to month, or I hope they don't change a lot month to month, because we're talking about 427 million barrels in inventory. So crude inventories, that's oil that's been produced and sitting around in refineries, those types of things, ready to go into crude oil refining to give us our different products. And that's what that talks about there. 20.1 million barrels a day was the last, over the last 4 weeks, is what's been supplied to the market, and that's 2.6% down from over the last year. WTI, West Texas Intermediate, just under $100 a barrel on July 15, down a little over $7 from the previous week, $28 a barrel more than a year ago. Spot prices on gasoline, $3.42 per gallon, a little less than the week prior, but $1, about 18 cents above a year ago. Okay, so those are the kind of things that are on this sheet, and then just the numbers in here. Crude oil input to refineries, 16.5 million barrels a day, and you can track that through for the previous weeks. So 16.1, 16.5, 16.52, and those types of things. Then the percent of refining capacity. So early July. This is 21. Sorry. So the previous week and then a year ago. 16.51, 1.6 million barrels in the week ending 7/15 just last week. Okay, oil and stock. And these are all the different sources. Includes the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, just under 1.7 billion barrels of oil in stock. So we'll look in a future time when we look at some of the stats sheets on what are the total oil reserves in the U.S. and how have those changed over the years, and what are forecasts for total production out of the various resources that we know exist. So price fluctuates. We'll jump back to oilprice.com, and if you go to the front page up here, they always list WTI, because WTI crude is a standard benchmark for U.S. oil. Brent crude is a standard for world oil. So here's the Brent over the past year. So late summer, or middle of the summer in 21, it was around $70 a barrel, and now over 100. And of course, you know why, because you're paying the extra price as you go to the pump. So WTI for the U.S., Brent for the world. This is Middle Eastern oil, I believe. The natural gas, same type of a picture, where the natural gas has gone through tremendous fluctuations over the past year. So a year ago, we were down around $4 a 1,000 cubic feet, and now we're hovering around 8, between 750 and 8, so almost doubled. And again, you know this if you heat with gas, and you've seen these prices increase. So one of the things I want to do, besides kind of giving and providing information on how the oil industry works and how oil is produced, is to kind of highlight maybe a different area of the country for a while, and focus in on wells and drilling and production and those types of things. And so one of the largest oil fields near to where I live, again in western South Dakota, is the Williston Basin. And so this map here shows the United States. These are all counties. And these blue areas up here are oil and gas production out of the Williston Basin. There's one county in Montana. Other than that, the rest of these are in North Dakota. And the first thing we're going to look at is the number of rigs that have been running in this province, the Williston Basin province up here. And I'm doing 4 dates, so I'm starting with the current week, which again ends 7/15. And then a week ago, and then January, the first week in January of 22, and then 1 year ago. And that's these 4 bars over here. So 1 year ago this week, 18 rigs were running in North Dakota. When I worked up in the Williston Basin in Williston starting in 1979, there were over 200 rigs running, and by the time I transferred my job to Wyoming, which was about not quite 18 months later, there were like 265 rigs in Williston Basin. Now there's 38. Okay, but it was up to 38 by the first of the year, and it's been steady at 38 through this year. Of those, about 95% of them are horizontal drilling, though again, those are the wells that drill horizontally, and I'll show you some profiles of those as we go into other shows. Again, little under 98% of those are drilling for oil. Okay, so that's just kind of a snapshot look at Williston Basin, number of rigs, and we'll go through various other basins, and here's all these other basins listed over here, and we'll go through and look at those. The DJ, Niobrara, that's south of us, down in southeastern Wyoming and north and north central Colorado, and so we'll look at those as well as we go forward. So here's just another product. This is a fantastic map, and again, I'm kind of zoomed in on North Dakota, but let me back out so we can kind of look at the U.S. in here. And this is a very powerful map. It has all of these options over here on the left side we can look at. So I'll just give you an example. If we go up here and click this power plants, it comes up with all the power plants that are in the United States. And if we drop this menu down, then there's solar, natural gas, wind, petroleum, coal, batteries, geothermal, all these sources, nuclear, all the different colors. Okay, so if you went into any single one and clicked on it, then it comes up with what it is. So it doesn't say right there what type it is. Oh, petroleum. Okay, so this burns on petroleum. So that's this this red. So is that these colors here? Let's try this one in Nebraska. Yep, that's petroleum. Okay, so where I live, right here in Rapid City, here's our power plant. This is natural gas. This was historically coal and then was converted a number of years ago to natural gas. Okay, so that's just an example. So you can go to this site wherever you're at and click on the plants around you and see. So these yellow says wind. Let's see if that really is. Solar. Okay. So, oh, solar. The deep yellow is solar. Okay. So solar plants. So you can see a lot of solar. The blue are pump storage. Those are hydropower. So this one is going to be up in Spearfish. Yes, Spearfish hydroelectric. This is on Spearfish Creek. Very, very small, 4 megawatt. So anyway, that's what's there. Okay, so I'm not going to belabor that and go through these. Natural gas processing plants. Where's your gas processed? There's where your natural gas is processed. Refineries. Where's your crude oil refined? Well, there they are. So not as many. They're scattered around. There's none in South Dakota. The nearest one is over here in Newcastle, Wyoming. That's this one right here. And this is Par Petroleum. And doesn't have any other information on there except for that. But that's where that refinery is. What if you live in the Rapid City or Black Hills area? That's where we get our gasoline from. Okay, and then these 3 boxes here, oil and gas wells, and they have them listed by kind of numeric, so A through N. Texas is all on their own, and then Ohio through Wyoming. And again, we'll look at different, when we look at different provinces, we'll look at different regions. The North Dakota should show up here, and to get it, you have to zoom in. So if we just continue to zoom in, all of a sudden a bunch of blue dots will show up right there, or not blue, purple. Okay, so you have to be into a certain resolution, but this is the oil wells, oil and gas wells in the Williston Basin in North Dakota. Okay, so one of the first things you might ask is, well, look at all these on straight lines. Is that something weird with the data, or is that what it is? And that's what it is. Most of these wells are new. They are from horizontal drilling, all drilled since probably 2008 and newer. And that's how they do it. They drill them on these section lines, and then these will be where these dots are. The well is vertical, and when it gets to a certain depth, then they turn north and they turn south and drill horizontal legs through these next sections. So if you pick any one of these again and right click, you should get a. Nope, I'm not getting a. You should get, and here you zoom in even more and you can see the well pads. So all these cleared areas are where the rig was set up and the well was drilled. But we should get well information. I guess we're not. Oh, there. Okay, left, just regular click. So Otis Petroleum, oil, gas. Not a lot of information on here. But I just wanted to show you this so you can see that this horizontal drilling has produced this very unique pattern of north-south type of drilling along section lines. Okay, the next map we want to look at to end is, again, focusing on North Dakota, and this is the state of North Dakota with the counties outlined. And again, there's all these different things that we can look at. The oil and gas wells, which are right here. And again, a lot of wells. The Williston Basin really heavily drilled and produced. And so if we zoom in, again, we start to get these more horizontal lines where the rigs were set. One more click and we should see the horizontal wells. And there's the horizontal wells. So all these lines are wells that were drilled from one location. So let me try to explain here. Let's zoom in on this one right here. And you can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 5 wells. So that means the rig was set up somewhere here, let's say over here on the east side, and this well was drilled, and then they just slid the rig, drilled another hole, slid the rig, drilled another hole, and they drilled these 5 wells from this one platform, and these are where the wells went. So this is going to be vertical from this point down to some depth, 9,000 feet or so, and then it turns horizontal, and they steer that bit underneath the ground and drill out these what are called laterals. You can see how far they extend. Okay, clear up to here. And then they frack these wells. So from this one platform up to here, this is 2 miles. So these have 2 mile long laterals. So 10, 12,000 feet. And each one is open to the formation and produces through that entire length of that well. Okay, so the one back in the vertical days, a rig sitting here would just collect from a small area beneath it, and then you'd have to move the rig and drill, move the rig and drill, move the rig and drill, and you're only penetrating a certain thickness of pay, where in this technique they go through the entire thing. So if you back out to where the furthest we can go without them disappearing, whoops, right here you can see that virtually the entire northwest part of North Dakota is almost totally underlain by horizontal wells. Okay, even under the Missouri River. Okay, so these are called directional wells or horizontal wells, and this is where the production comes from in the Williston Basin of North Dakota. Okay, so I think that's going to probably be an end for this one today. Again, as I go through this, I'm going to be a little bit smoother on transitions from resource to resource and look at the numbers, and as we get a feel for what we want to talk about week to week, it'll just go through more seamless, and then we'll focus in on a different area like maybe the DJ Basin, Niobrara formation next time, and then we'll look at the Eagle Ford or the Marcellus in different parts of the country and look at the same type of products and see how the oil is developed over in these other regions. Continuing to track number of rigs, number of barrels produced daily, refining capacity, price of the crude, price of the refined gas, those types of things, plus other sectors of the energy industry as we continue to move forward on this. So let me know if you like this. Let me know if there's something in the industry that you're interested in but you've never learned or had any information on and are wanting some further information on it, and I'll try to delve into that. So leave a comment below. If you haven't already and you like this, subscribe to this channel. There's a lot more other content on here. Geology of the Black Hills and things like that primarily, and then I'll be starting in this series as we move forward from here. So give this thing a like, share with your friends, and I'll see you next week